Hello, this is Cho of the Shiny Colors Discord. Welcome to another episode of the Shiny Review. Today we have 4 cards to talk about. We have the new Produce SSR for Amana. We also have the new Produce SR for Luca. And then we have the My Songs collection for both Yuika and for Koito. Keep in mind, of course, Amana and Luca are permanent. If you pull Amana, you will get 2 additional copies of her for free. So you'll get an automatic 2 stars for doing so, as I recall, which is nice. And then Luca is just a permanent SR, her first. So if you want a Luca SR, this is your opportunity to get it early. Otherwise, you'll just find her on basically any other banner. Meanwhile, you have My Songs collection, which is a pseudo-limited banner, meaning that when that banner comes back, they come back as well. So the only reason you'd want to necessarily pull on this is that you really like Yuika and or Koito, and you want to ideally spark or not spark, since they're on raid up for now, since you won't be able to spark them in the future. So, with that said, let's go ahead and talk about Amana. So, Amana starts out as a visual unit and gradually evolves into a dance unit. Her visual appeal is Visual 3.0 that applies a 5% mental health regen for 4 turns. The Plus appeal requires the full Alstromedia lineup and to have 10 or more heals within the Produce run, so 10 different instances of healing. This grants you a flexible buff for 1 turn, which means that any future Plus appeals now activate if they were already in your hand on the following turn, regardless of their condition. The upgraded version of her appeal is a Dance 4.5 that applies a 10% mental health regen for 4 turns, and under the same conditions, grants you an additional flexible for 1 turn. For her passives, she has a Dance Visual 25% up, which is not very good. Her 2-star passive is the first one that's really notable, which is a Dance Visual 75% up that requires 5 or more heals total in the run, which has a 20% chance to activate twice. Then she has a Dance 85% passive that requires the full Alstromedia lineup, which has a 20% chance to activate once. Her memory appeal, when maxed out, is a Dance 60% buff for 5 turns that links into a Dance maximum 3.5 appeal based on how high your mental is. Amana is a little rough. In concept, this all seems neat, but requiring 10 or more heals to get a single bonus plus up heal activation is kind of bad. While you have some Alstro cards that activate on 5 or 6, which is fairly reasonable and fast, 10 is still pretty slow, all things considered. At best, you can cheat it out using someone else's flexible to get a bit of a snowball effect going, but I don't think that too many plus appeals are that important at the moment. So, I would say you really just get this card for the art itself or for the story. I do think the card is very pretty, so I do understand people pulling for that specifically. In terms of functionality, I would say that she's a B or B+ as a card, and about a C+ as a center. Buff into appeal is fine. The problem is that sometimes buffs don't really feel all that strong because of how diminishing returns sort of work out. And since Alstro is a team that kind of depends on a ton of buffs like that, it may not be the best thing in the world. It also doesn't help you in a pinch if for some reason your link appeals are just not lining up the way they need to, which is another thing to bring up, but that's more or less a weakness of any memory appeal per se. So that said, I think the card is like okay, not some huge meta-defining card. It is a perm after all, but it has some interesting applications at the very least. Then of course we have Luca. So this being Luca's first Produce SR in the gacha, and in the game in general, there are some questions that are answered with her design. The first being that she's the Produce SR with a plus appeal, which is a 50% vocal buff if it is turn 4 or later with Luca in your skill history. This is applied to both her vocal 2.5 appeal and her visual 3.5 appeal. Same conditions, just you change up if it's a vocal or visual buff depending on which appeal it is. They also grant 1 mulligan, in addition to whatever you currently have. So if you're running, say for example, Luca alongside Nocchill, where you get 1, I believe, then you will actually get an additional 1 if you use Luca appeal, which can be interesting, but maybe not the best thing to necessarily be doing. For her passives, the only one that really matters is her 2-star, which is a visual 50% up if it's turn 3 or earlier, has a 20% chance to activate twice. Her memory appeal, when maxed out, is a vocal visual 2.0. Card's pretty bad. Mulligan on a permanent SR is neat. I'm glad that they're starting to experiment with a couple more effects on lower rarity cards, so that way people have an opportunity to mess around with an effect that is normally locked away to other cards or certain cards that you can't get anymore. So it's cool that they're like, yeah, we'll just put this on a permanent SR and see how it goes. Thumbs up for me for that, at least. You have to sacrifice one appeal for the other to make use of the plus effect in the first place, unless you're using the Luca support appeal, but that doesn't necessarily count because I don't believe that applies a Luca duet, as far as I remember, but maybe I'm misremembering how the Luca SSR works. Since SRs are banished from Mattering Infest because of how meme points work, this card's not going to be very important. I'm not going to be mean and give this card like a D, because that would be very rude, but just understand that this card is not going to see play basically at all, and you're doing it to get a Luca costume. So if either of these outfits are important to you, then that's what you get this card for. Now, on to the second set of cards. We have My Songs Collection. So first and foremost, we have Yuika, who is a pure visual card. Her first appeal is a visual 0.5 that reduces the judge's interest by 70% for one turn, and the plus appeal effect requires you to have the full Antika lineup, and your current mental has to be 74% or lower in order to duet randomly with Antika. The upgraded version of this appeal is a visual 5.0 that again reduces the judge's interest by 70%, but this one also grants you 25% to your memory gauge. Also worth mentioning, both of these appeals ignore the judge's interest, so that means that your effect on reducing their interest is not weighed down on your damage, so you get to take full effect of that even if you would say already used this appeal the previous turn, and then just get to stack that up from there. This also lasts an additional turn over the 0-star version of the appeal, which is very enticing. The plus appeal is a double duet with Antika under the conditions of being below 49% health and having the full Antika lineup, which is cute. I don't know if it's necessarily very good, but it is something. For her passives, she first has a visual 60% up, which also grants you attention 100% up if it's turned to her earlier, and has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a visual 85% up if your mental is 4,500 or higher in terms of your max mental, while your current mental is 75% or higher. 20% chance up to 2 times. Then finally, the 4-star passive is a visual 150% up, alongside attention 50% down. It requires your max mental to be 4,500 or higher, and your current mental to be 39% or lower. This has a 40% chance to activate twice. For her memory appeal, at max it's a visual 3.0 that scales based on how low your attention is. That links into the same visual 3.0 that scales based on how low your attention is. I actually think this Yuika is pretty neat, but there are some weird hiccups. She doesn't quite have the cards to consistently get to lower health while also dropping attention to make the most of her memory appeal. I do appreciate that this card has functionality as both an early game card with her high health passives, as well as late game advantageous positions with her low health passives. The problem is that Visual Antika is still not a very good team, and while this card is pretty cool, the rest of the pieces do not add up to making this card feel that much more impactful. I think Antika, or at least Visual Antika, is going to need 1, maybe 2 more cards in order to really solidify what it is they exactly want to be doing. They need somebody that can cut mental a lot harder, which I'm honestly surprised that this Yuika does not cut your mental in any sort of way, because I think that would actually go a long way in making this card a lot more consistent for Visual Antika, which is kind of the sticking point. 6.0 is a pretty alright memory appeal in regards to Antika, so you can actually run this Yuika as a center and be able to take out somebody like Mamimi 4, who's been there for forever, and maybe even throw her onto the visual position in order to make the most of it. Appeals will be annoying for non-Antika people to deal with because of that Wanderlust effect and her being able to ignore interest, which is everybody's favorite mechanic. But again, I think that this team in general needs at least 1 more card to really be threatening. They're kind of missing their teeth right now. So I'm going to give Yuika the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to say B+ to maybe A+ as a card, and an easy S as a center, at least for Antika. Definitely worth the pull if you're interested in investing into Visual Antika in the future, but not something if you're just like, okay, I'm going to start building this team right now. Might be a little too difficult. So last but not least, we have Koito, who is a pure dance unit. Her initial appeal is a dance 3.5 that provides a dance 30% buff for 3 turns and gives you +1 mulligan for the rest of the fest run. The link appeal, which requires Madoka, is a duet with Hinata. The upgraded version of the appeal is a dance 5.0 that raises your dance by 60% for 3 turns, again grants 1 additional mulligan, and this time links with Toru in order to get a duet with Hinata. Her 1-star passive is a dance 40% up that requires it to be turn 2 or earlier, and it has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a dance 70% up and memory gauge 10% up that requires 2 or more active attention up buffs. This has a 20% chance to activate twice. And finally, she has a 4-star passive, which is a dance 130% up and attention 50% up that requires 3 or more active dance up buffs. This also has a 20% chance to activate twice. Her memory appeal, when maxed out, is a dance 2.0 that links into a dance 2.5. Koito is kinda It's a little bit misguided, I think. The goal is to realistically use her effect to skip Hinata's turn. So ideally you have a situation where, because you're linking with Madoka, it means that Madoka has already appealed, which then you get to Hinata, which then means that you can technically link appeal with Toru on turn 3, which has some application, but it's not particularly good. The problem, though, is that Hinata is your center, so skipping her doesn't actually do anything. I think if this card had skipped, say, Madoka, then it maybe would actually work out a little bit better. It's hard to really say what they're trying to go for other than that very specific Toru rotation. There also isn't enough attention up going around within the Dance Nocchill builds in order to really make the most of what that team is already trying to do, and the fact that this card really doesn't do any of that makes it really hard to use any of her passives. You need 2 or more attention up buffs, but the thing is that Dance Nocchill isn't using Cart Toru anymore. In fact, they probably haven't been using Cart Toru for a pretty long while once the Alstromeria engine was put together. So, getting those attention up buffs is pretty difficult. Then, you need to also get your active dance up buffs, and in order to get those, you need to be getting hit, which means you need to have more attention. And if you aren't getting more attention, then you aren't getting hit as often, which means those buffs are going to be less consistent from somebody like Toru, for example. So all in all, it kind of compounds into this situation where Koito just doesn't quite do enough to really justify a lot of what she's even trying to do. I think that this card really did need attention up on these appeals, so that way you could compound this by saying, oh, she has an active dance up buff, and she also has an active attention buff, so that way you can at least sort of get the ball rolling, but the buff durations are also pretty short across Dance Nocchill, meaning that you're not going to have a whole lot of time to activate these particular passives. All this goes to say that Dance Nocchill is still a very weird team, and I don't know exactly what they're trying to do with it. There's clearly an idea here with this Koito, and I don't know if this means that they're just going to start a new wave of Dance Nocchill support to try to fix it, to make this card look better, but for now I think this card is maybe the weakest of the batch so far, at least among the MSC cards, and is probably not a huge sell unless you really like the animations, which are also very fair. Koito's MV has been really popular from the people I've been talking to. There's a lot of fun energy to it, which is really understandable. So if you're in it for the costume, then that's, you know, a whole different ball game than using the card functionally. Cool card visually, not a very cool card functionally. I'm going to give this card a B- to maybe a B+, and she's at least an A- center, maybe B+. The numbers are still kind of low, but that's also Nocchill. So this card is like not a must-have, kind of interesting, unless you really like the costume, in which case, go for the costume. So, that will do it for the video today. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. If you appreciate this video, feel free to let me know in the comments, or like the video, share it around, etc., etc. I always appreciate more faces to check out what it is that's going on here in Shiny Colors. So, next time we'll be talking about whatever banner comes next. We have the preview of it, which people are kind of deciding, is it maybe somebody like Nichika? Is it maybe Asahi? Could be somebody. We do know the support is going to be Choco, which as a Hokuto P is a little frustrating, but what can you do? Till the next video, I've been Sho. Once again, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day.